step behind the podium so
Yeah, sure.
folks online can see me. Did you hit record?
I did. It didn't say recording in progress.
Okay.
So.
All right. Good. All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming to this. I'm not sure which number this is. The 9th presentation in the Spring 2026 Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar at Westchester University. My name is Bradley Flam. I'm the director of the Office of Sustainability, and our office has been very happy to co-sponsor this series of presentations, which dates back almost 9 years at this point, with our colleagues in the Office for Research and Sponsored Programs and the Sustainability Council's Scholarly and Creative Activities Committee. We do, as many of you know, whether you're joining us online through Zoom or are here in person, we offer this series of speakers every week at Wednesday at noon. And we still have 2 more presentations this semester, so please join us next Wednesday and the Wednesday after. And now, without further ado, I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming Dr. Amir Golmohamadi.
Thank you, Brad, and good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon, right?
It is.
Yeah, so thanks for having me today. And as you know from the topic, so today I'm going to talk about organic, non-organic foods, like this is kind of like controversial topic, and pesticide residue and sustainability. So I'm going to take different pieces together and then connect it toward the end to sustainability. So that's kind of like how I'm going to approach that. A little bit background about me. By education, I'm a food scientist. I completed my PhD in food science from School of Food Science, University of Idaho. And after completing a postdoc experience, I joined Westchester University Nutrition Department in 2015. My work has been mostly connecting food science and nutrition in general. So in this presentation, I'm going to kind of like going over, many of you already may know about the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, just quick capture of that. Then I'm going to look at the history of agriculture and the connection of that with the current food system that we have, and organic and non-organic foods and pesticides residue and evidence-based approaches to meet the goals of the United Nations, but just from a different lens probably, and then summary and final remark. Okay, so this is going to be like the common themes that you will see in this presentation. The productivity challenge that we currently have in case of food production, like in the US and outside, and pesticide risk. So we are looking at evidence versus perceptions, and practical path to sustainable food systems. Okay, so what are Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations? They were implemented in 2015, set of 17 interconnected goals adopted by all UN members. It was not mandatory, it was just optional, but it was highly recommended as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So the goals are set to end poverty, protect planet, and ensure prosperity, and with 3 kind of like pillars: economic, social, and environmental sustainability aspect of that. So we all know, probably like at this point, hopefully, about all of these 17 goals, but my focus is going to be like on some of those goals are related to nutrition indirectly. The second goal is like contains a little bit more of nutrition. So that's zero hunger, which is the second goal, has some subsection goals, and 2.1 says that by 2030, we're going to end hunger and ensure access by all people, and after like some details, to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food for all year round. Currently, the world is kind of like, based on the latest evaluation in 2025, we are still behind. About twice as many people as the population of the U.S., roughly 600 million people, will not have access to or will not meet this goal, and we still will see poverty like hunger around the world, specifically in developing, underdeveloped nations. So if we look at the kind of like the hierarchy of this goal, it contains some keywords like resilient agriculture. So an agriculture that is resilient to drought, to flood, and to pests and all that. Productivity is an important factor in agriculture. And then adaptation to climate change and improve land and soil. So these are like keywords that you can see in the target 2.4 of this goal, kind of like an overarching of what I want to focus on. Okay, so there are some kind of like challenges to meet these goals currently, and that's why probably like it has been like we will not be able to meet this goal by 2030 for certain percentage of population, and that I have listed some of them here. Unstable climate, we have droughts in California, for example, flooding in Pennsylvania, flooding in parts of Europe, South Asia, and droughts in, say, Middle East. Flood in Middle East. So we have like all sorts of things, and global warming, which is kind of like, it's controversial also, like with political aspect of that currently, but global warming is just a fact that we have seen like based on the data. In developing countries, one thing that is kind of culturally happens in, like when you look at nutrition and culture, is that as the income increases in some parts of the world, they tend to include more meat in their diets. So that meat requires more resources and energy to produce. I gave you an example on this slide. 6 pounds of feed is needed to produce 1 pound of pork, and that is just what we consider as just one of the cheapest meat production or method, because the yield is good. So that is exhaustive for environment, and then we will have impact of agriculture itself on the environment. Soil erosion is one of that, and we use a fertilizer and pesticide, which is kind of like I'm going to focus on in this presentation. So in order to kind of like give you an idea about agriculture, use of fertilizers and pesticides in agriculture, I just need to give you like a historical background. Agriculture started like 1,000 years ago from farming, right? And always the denominator between the past and present of agriculture has been, we want to create an artificial situation. So it's not like forest. We need to do crop. We have crops. We need to protect the crops from pests. We need to irrigate it. We need to feed the crops in order to give the food, like so the crops can give us food. So that's kind of like, it's not something that it happens naturally, but we need to control it, just like an experiment in the lab. So we need to control everything. So that requires intervention, and intervention it means that we want to increase the yield and quality. So quality means that like less waste and higher yield. We want to, like, part of that is profit, part of that is just to feed people or to give the goals. So about toward the end of 1950s, toward middle of 1980s, a large amount of funding, research funding, was like specifically in the U.S. Was or were given to research institution to research how we can increase the yield, reduce the cost of agriculture, and how we can control it so we can have more food produced. Prior to that, food was expensive. Now you can walk in a grocery store and buy whatever that you want in any part of the world. You have food available. And that's the result of this area, which is called Green Revolution. A large amount of, I know that these are controversial, but that's the topic here. So fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, and plus irrigation techniques were developed. And a new variety of plants were bred, or it was after 100 years of scientific research in genetics. 1983 was the result of this 100 years from Mendel up to like Ghent in Belgium, that they resulted that, we have been able to grab like 3 genes from one plant or from a creature or whatever that you want to call it, grab it, put it in a bacteria, infect the other plant, and then transfer the gene. So we have been able, so that's called genetic engineering. So that genetic engineering was a result of scientific research for 100 years. It is also known as GMO, but GMO, when you look at the specific definition, I will explain that later. Everything that we eat contains some sort of GMO. GE is genetic engineering, which is more targeted. GMO is modification. Like breeding is modification, selection. So that's kind of like, that's why I say it's also known as GMOs. Okay, so this advancement in science resulted in increasing the total output and factor productivity in crops. And we see that from 1950 to kind of like 25 to 2021. This is the latest data that we have, but it's just increasing the yield of foods. And with the same, so this bottom one says that total farm input. So nothing has changed in case of the land that has been used for food. But this has been, like, we have been able to increase the yield of production. So because of that advancement, we have been able to like increase the yield of, just for wheat and rice, double in just 20 years. And that helped us to feed the growing population that we can see here. 76 million from 1900, let's just put like 152 million in 1950, and between 2025, 342 million in US just itself. And in the world, we have seen the same trend increasing because like the health status of people in general improved. So we have been able to feed this growing population because of that. Yes, there's like, we still have 600 million people that are unfed, like we see malnutrition, but that's kind of like the policy, the management part of that. But we have enough food, part of that is wasted, unfortunately. So it's kind of like that is the management, but we have the capacity to do that. So when you look at just kind of like crops, agriculture, and farm products, we can divide them into livestock and crops that are grown in the field. So this shows from 2001 to 2015. That was the latest data that I could find. And 2026, sometime, I don't know when, they said that like they're going to update this data, but we will see the same kind of like trend. A large amount of food production in livestock crops. We have that from 2001 to 2015. Part of that is organic food. roughly 6 to 8% of that is organic food production. The rest of that is still relying on heavy use of pesticide, fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers that involves a lot of chemistry behind that, and then 6% of that to 8% is organic. The organic food is partially driven by the demand of people like us, specifically like educated people, like those people who have more income, and that was kind of like from the passion of those people, like protecting environment. Part of that was that like food industry at the end of the day is just a business. So they found that there is a market for that, so they're trying to shift. One, consumer is demanding, two, there's a market, so they're shifting toward that. So 6% of that is, in the US, is organic, 6 to 8%. So this is the size of the organic market. The prominent user, or just the larger market, is US. Roughly $68 billion, that's the size of the US market out of 130 of the global organic market. And US is the third by far, and it's just far away from Australia in case of production land dedicated to organic crops. We are looking at commercial production. We're not looking at backyard farming or small farming, so it's just commercial. So 132 million acres of land is dedicated in Australia because they found that they can do that, and they exported that. Then second is India, and you can see like the size of the market is just far less than US in case of consumption. So there's a big market in the US while we do not produce as much. So this is the growth from 2002 to 2024. Like the size has increased. That is the Organic Trade Association data, and the total sale is now $65 billion, just in general from all organic. So there are like some details involved here, so I have skipped those details. But we have organic markets, so demand plus care for the environment, those are like the main goals here. Prior to 1990, there was no standard for organic food production. 1990, Congress passed an act to kind of legalize the production of the organic, and there are some sort of standards. They should, like, organic foods should not have genetically engineered ingredients. Again, I said like AKA GMO, because genetic engineering means that like you're targeting a specific genes and transferring that to a different plant or species. There shouldn't be any synthetic pesticides, so they use organic pesticides or like other intervention or rotation of crops. And no irradiation techniques. So irradiation techniques are used in food industry like in order to they call it cold pasteurization. So they target bacteria, microorganisms, or insects, specifically like for crops that are imported to US. And that reduces the total population of microbial contaminants or pests. So there shouldn't be no irradiation, like using like gamma ray, for example, for this process. There are levels of organic, but economically, like for production, these two top are going to be the best option, like 100% organic and organic. So organic is 95% organic. That's the other thing. So there are like some leeways around that, but the made with organic, specific organic ingredients, barely you can find it because it's just not feasible to produce that. So all of these organics should be without excluded methods. These are 3 of those. There's a large table on FDA that you can refer to that. Okay. So when you look, you still see a small percentage of the organic food market is dedicated to organic, a large amount to conventional. This might be like your concern about non-organic foods or the question about non-organic foods. Like these are like hormones and antibiotics in animal products. Like some of them are not valid, some of them are valid concerns. For example, like antibiotics or hormones. Let's just say hormones are not used in chickens. It's just a misconception, but we are not going to the details of that, but these are just kind of like common concerns. GMO, or specifically GE, environmental impacts of using pesticides, which is valid, and agrochemical, synthetic fertilizers, and pesticides specifically. Okay, so what I want to do is just tell you that like, what is the level of the risk and what we can do to reduce this risk over time, and what are the strategies that probably like we need to focus on along with working on this problem. Okay, so probably you know that, but like pesticides are used to prevent diseases and infestation. We have herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and other types of pesticides that are like variety of pesticides. There are like there are variety of pesticides, and you can say like 1,000. I don't recall the number exactly, but they are used from 1960s to now. Again, this is just the latest data that I got, but they are used for mostly like herbicides and in crops in order to reduce diseases and infestations. Majority of the pesticides or herbicides are used for corn, and you can see other like crops, and then followed by other like soybeans. So corns and soybeans are the majority of use, and also we use GEs or genetically engineering in these two, specifically like for soybean, not corn, at this point. And this is kind of like chemistry, but I just want to give you an idea. Like 70% of pesticides are a group of pesticides that are called organophosphates. So we are not going to this. Just know that it's 70% organophosphate. So organophosphate, but if you just get a few drops of organic phosphate, it's highly toxic. Okay, just by themselves. But we are not adding like droplets. We're just using that differently. So since these are available, like pesticides are available, there are some environmental activists that they have, including like environmental working group. Every year they produce a list of 30 dozen, and that means that like these crops that you see or foods that you see, fruits, vegetables, need to be, or they highly recommend, or they say that just get those from organic sources, or get do the organic options. So we have spinach, strawberry, they go interchangeably. Okay? So what I want to do is that I just want to give you an idea of like top of the list usually is a strawberry. So okay, and it's just something that we like eat, like specifically like during the summertime, May to October, that's the time. So I just want to give you an idea of like your risk when you consume a strawberry. There are some like technical terms that I want to say, and I try to make it like as simple as possible. LOD, limited detection, is that like when you run it through like a chemistry device, HPLC for example. So the level of detection is to a certain point. You cannot detect below that. So say that it's just 2 ppm, and by ppm it's just 1 part per million. To give you an idea, probably just smaller than a grain of, it may not be a good analogy, but a grain of, or portion of a grain of sugar in a pound of sugar. But that's just not a good analogy, but just 1 part per million. Anywhere that like in the other slide that you see cons, it means the concentration that has been detected. Okay, so that is in ppm. In US, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, set a limit for the amount of pesticide that can be found in a crop. That is called tolerance level, TL. In European Union, that is called MRL. Okay, so those are numbers. For example, malathion is an organophosphate. Is one type of a mixture of pesticides that are used in a strawberry. So malathion tolerance level is 8, which means that it's 8 milligram per kilogram of strawberry, and 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. Okay. It is through a research-based process and literature review process. This is a busy thing, but I will make it easy for you. So in food toxicology, there is on top, like this is a reverse pyramid, NOAEL, if you see on the red part, NOAEL is no observable adverse effect level. It means that at that point, you do not see any, like if you say like organophosphates pesticide, if you eat at that point, beyond that, it will be toxic. Below that, you do not see any adverse health effect. About 100 times less than that is ARFD-ADI, kind of like as you go from top to bottom toward the yellowish, greenish part, this part. These are like two numbers that if I eat like this amount of pesticide every day for my lifetime, 80 years, and in one sitting, I will not see any problem. Like I'm fine because we see pesticides almost everywhere, and MRL and TL are usually like 100 to 1,000 times less than those. Very conservative. So here NOAEL is safe. This TL is far less concentration. Maybe 10,000 times less, 80,000 times less concentrated. It's just a drop of sugar in like 200 gallons of water. Okay, so is it sweet? No. Does it contain sugar? Yes, and a few molecules of sugar. So that's kind of like that. Okay, so tolerance level is here, toxic level is here. So it's just, that's kind of like give you an idea. So that is just the toxicology chemistry of that. Okay, so if you recall, 70% of U.S. Pesticides are organophosphates. Let's check the list on a strawberry. Okay, that's on top of the dirty dozen, which means that this is the dirtiest, like loaded with pesticides. These are like the, again, ppm and all that. USDA, they do like regular systematic sampling. They do measurement of pesticides in all the states, and they report it and record it in their website, which is PDP database. And if you go to that, you see a list of pesticides here, like you see like lactofen, and then like lineuron, and then you have malathion. Okay, so I checked that. I checked strawberries, and for the past 8 years, I give me the data that are analytical results, positive detects only. So I had this result, I exported that, I made an average, and based on like the average was 0.02. Don't worry about like all of these jargons here, okay? There's an acute dose, there's a chronic dose. These are like set by EPA. And when we look at those numbers, like this is 0.14, doesn't make any sense probably like for some of you. ADI probably like doesn't make much sense at this point, but here's the thing. So let's say that like someone is 160 pounds, okay? That person is 72.5 kilograms. When you do the calculation, this is ppm, and accounting the ARFD and ADI into account, like doing the calculation based on the body weight. So someone is like a heavier person, so this number is different. This is just 160 kilograms for one person, like a person. We can adjust these numbers, get different things. You can like get this number. I can definitely explain those in details. And eventually, like for that person is 160 pounds, eventually they need to eat 1,100 pounds of strawberries in a day to probably to put themselves to the like top of the pyramid, like reverse pyramid. How many of you eat that 1,100 pounds of a strawberry in one day in a sitting? Or, okay, so probably my daughter does that too. So that's kind of like I wanted to give you an idea. This is from like, we have the science, the evidence from the science outside of the body, and we have done the science inside the body. So from the science outside of the body, it's very kind of like pesticide residues are not a concern generally. Okay, so that's from scientific studies. It may not be something that some people are expecting, but that's the fact. We are looking at the evidence. And when you look at that, like this data for the past 5 years or 10 years, you see that the residues have dropped in many crops, even for conventional. So we have like 99% of the U.S. food that is safe, way below tolerance level, or no detectable pesticide residue. So this this results and like data are reviewed by EPA P50 every 15 years, and that is the data was updated in February of 2026. Now, we still do not have enough data about this residue in our body. The evidence in like from nutrition standpoint, health standpoint is evolving. The animal studies cannot be easily translated in nutrition. In toxicology, yes, but not in nutrition. It cannot be easily translated to people. So, but what we know is that children, pregnant women, and farm workers are exposed to or just at higher risks, but not mostly through foods, through residential, farm, or the occupational exposure. And that causes like Parkinson, childhood leukemia, and cognitive defectives. Okay. And I will say that like, what is microbiome? And we don't have any enough information about microbiome yet. But these are like some misconception about organic and non-organic. Organic foods are GMO-free and pesticides-free. No, that's not right. Corn, go back, like search on Google, like corn in 1900, 1890. What was the shape of corn? Say corn from Mexico, and now the corn that you see. It has been evolved. It is a different, because we selected specific types, so through breeding, crossbreeding, we did some modification, genetic modification. So organic foods are not just pesticide-free. It's not the case. We have messed up the environment. We have added a lot of pesticides everywhere, and pesticides are in our water, in our food, in our soil. So even organic foods contain pesticides. It's just like in a 25 mile per hour speed zone, organic food is driving at 15, you like conventional drive at 20. 15 and 20 are both safe, but they still contain pesticide. So that is not right. So that is a misconception. Organic food production, including organic meat, is environmentally friendly. Not in all cases. When you put a checklist, organic foods contain, like, they pass many of the environmental and sustainability checkpoints. But there are still things to do that. So I'm just telling you there's some misconception, but one thing that we need to focus on. So over 3,000 variety of crops, organic and non-organic, they are GMOs. We need to kind of like look at that things differently and focus on sustainability rather than distracting us from pesticide residue. We know that pesticides have messed up the environment, or we're adding that it's not sustainable. But it's just not like a switch off and on button that we can just switch to organic and do it right. Because like meat is not generally sustainable. We need to switch to plant-based foods. So we need to focus on sustainable development goals. Pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know, they have increased the yield. So they have fed people. Somehow we have met the second goal, or meeting the second goal of the United Nations. But environmentally, and also what happens inside the body, we don't have enough information. So we need to do collaborative work and looking at evidence-based strategies in order to focus on a sustainable goals. So for example, one problem with organic production is that the yield. Yield used to be like 34% less in 2018. Now we have increased or decreased it to 18.4% in 2023. So that means that we have advanced, but more lands means more, we are limited with lands. More soil erosion, somehow, not always, but that's just something that we need to focus on. And the evidence currently says that if we can combine organic practices, which passes many of the environmental or just sustainability aspects, combine it with conventional techniques, can we look at use of GEs in organic in order to make it less pesticide use, or make it more pest deterrent, So we are not sure. We need like an integrative or integrated agriculture techniques. So over time, definitely we need to switch to something that is just less pesticide heavy. We cannot forever add pesticides to the environment because there are like some chemical compounds that are hard to degrade and they never degrade, like forever chemicals. Hard to degrade, never degrade. So we still do not have that knowledge. What happens to them? Like we need to reduce pesticides use in agriculture because one thing is just we cannot add it to the environment. The other thing is we do not know what happens to our gut microbiome. In our gut, we have a population of microbes that we have realized that they have connection with our health. So this is very new. Like after 2020, we are investing more on understanding what happens to gut microbiome. Like people who consume more conventional versus organic, what happens to them? And it seems that we are seeing some connection between changing microbiome and say like increasing diabetes risk. So we're not sure about this part. It's evolving. We need to integrate best practices of agricultural, organic and conventional farming, promoting plant-based diets. We need to include more plants in our food as much as possible, or promoting that in order to reduce the impact of our food chain on the environment. Interdisciplinary collaboration between social, food, nutrition, and foods, like these sections of sciences will help. I look at things from food science. Someone looks at that from pure chemistry. Someone look at that, oh no, from social science, it's just absolutely not acceptable. So how we can just find a good connection? Someone from nutrition and dietetics say that I cannot recommend my clients just to do organic because they cannot afford it. And so in case of at the industrial level, they're working on like developing new plant-based products, but that is just kind of like a market-based. That market changes over time. So just to wrap up things, in about a minute, I'll be done. We know that food production needs to be efficient, economic, and we need to reduce the impact of food production on the environment. We know that what we know is just both organic and non-organic foods contain pesticides because we have added pesticides like from 1950s to the environment. And that is it's just like another group of polyaromatic hydrocarbons that are coming from exhausts of cars. And then we need to find alternatives for pesticides. Organic farmings have been advanced in that part, but it is limited with the ceiling of market demand. We cannot go beyond the demand. And there are some gaps involved here between different fields. We need to fill the gaps by promoting collaboration and interdisciplinary work. These are just some of my references. And thank you. Just let me know if there's any questions.
Going back to the pyramid, you were saying that for strawberries, for example, that all the testing said that it's still within that safe limits in the green zone. So does that mean that it's fine to eat non-organic strawberries? Because I'm very much into buying only organic fruits and vegetables, but they are very expensive. So are you suggesting it's fine to eat the non-organic? Or are we saying
This is what the science says.
Yeah.
Science says that we are, for non-organic, we're just kind of like here, or even here. Organic, probably like we're here. So there's no different. They're all way, way safe. Like from pesticide residue, because currently, like I said, we have in vitro outside of the body and in vivo out inside the body. So from in vitro, the body of knowledge says that it is fine eating non-organic, but the other part, not sure. So currently, the answer is yes, it's as safe as organic. Mm-hmm.
Does that include all foods? Your question was about strawberry, right? Or was your question generic?
That includes all foods. Some foods, like because when they do these tests, they're USDA, there are like some consumers procedure, like you rinse food. So there are like some pesticides are washed away. Yeah, it goes to the food to the system, but all the foods currently, like 99% of the foods in U.S., 98.5%, I think, in European Union is safe. So they do not go, when they say it means that they do not go beyond this tolerance level. This
So
is
that's
a
true
legal
for
limit.
U.S. and Europe as well.
Europe, yeah.
Europe as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an additional question.
Sure.
You know, there are always these fads, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, and right now the fad is eat protein. Oh, you need to eat protein. You do exercise, you need to eat protein. They're pushing this everywhere. And I just walked through the chemistry building the other day, and I see research there that actually shows if you eat too much protein, apparently if you have too much protein in your body, yes, you need it to rebuild muscle, but if it's too much, then that could also have negative effects. It was very interesting research. And so my question is, which, you know, some few years ago, don't eat any carbohydrates. If you go further back, don't eat any eggs. You know, so it always goes in waves. So what is the correct thing to do? Isn't it better to eat a little bit of everything in the old-fashioned way that the body really needs carbohydrates in maybe not in this great quantity, but it needs carbohydrates as well for energy, and if you do aerobic activities, athletes, you know, they have to eat that. And then how much protein? Maybe too much protein is not good either. So I'm just asking.
Yeah, so one size doesn't fit all. So that's so if you're looking at an athlete, so they have a different demand of like proteins, carbohydrates. When someone like life is probably like a regular life without much exercises, so definitely that's gonna be a different thing. So general recommendation is are very general. For example, like include more whole wheat in your diet. This is a general recommendation, but some cultures we see that they eat like white bread. At the same time, they are adding the fiber to the diet differently in their rice. So everything needs to be customized to that person, individual. But and at the same time, evidences change. Like nutrition recommendations change because lifestyles change. Things happen, like it evolves. So that's how I can answer your question at this point.
Yeah, it was just the extreme, you know, if you, let's say you cut out carbohydrates altogether, what would happen to?
Yeah, so it's kind of like those are something that is not supported by, unless like a dietitian after like evaluation thinks that okay, just cut carbohydrate to half, but not as a one size fits all.
Thank you.
We are at 12:50, and we often pause here in case someone needs to get to another class by 1 o'clock. Do you have time for a few more questions?
I'm fine.
So if you need to leave now, please do so quietly. And if you still have some questions, please stay for a few more minutes.
Absolutely.
We do have a
Okay,
question on
take
this
care.
one, too.
We have a question on Zoom, so could you read that out?
No, Cheryl has her hand up, so Cheryl will answer, so I can pull it up and make sure. You can see her and hear her too on
Is it?
Zoom.
Okay.
I hear you.
Oh, we can you guys hear enough? Let me see if I can get the sound to come
Louder.
through.
Oh, okay. So
I can be loud.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
And I always have questions. So thank you, Amir, for this
Sure, Cheryl.
presentation. Yeah, I mean, you've comforted me in two ways. First of all, that your call for like an integrated approach to this problem. And second of all, that non-organics may not be, as bad as we all think. I am concerned in a couple of ways that I might be getting my malathion from strawberries. I might also be getting it from potatoes and, all these other places where they accumulate in my system, and how they act with, react with other chemicals such as whatever the stuff is. I think it's ethylene that they spray stuff in to keep it fresh. So I'm worried about that. But my main worry is that some of your stats, especially the testing stats, were from 2018, which is before the current attack on the USDA and the EPA, especially in their enforcement arms and testing arms. So I'm wondering if you see any changes, perhaps in data, on the basis of, well, we're not federally testing this stuff as much because parts of the USDA and EPA have been gutted in order to be against regulation. I don't know.
yeah, like the latest data that you can find on that platform is 2024. When I select 2024 to 2020, like 2020 to 2024, there are very limited data are available. So that doesn't mean that there's no data, like detectable samples. So it means that that's a good news. But I haven't, like the data after 24 up to this point, like the past 2 years, it's not there yet. So I would say, like, at least the reason that I went back all the way to 2016 was to get more data so I can show you some information. But it has got better between 2020 to 2024. But what has happened after that, I need to wait, or we all need to wait. Yeah,
I'm a bit worried about that.
yeah. And to answer your question about like cumulative effect, again, when you look at these numbers, when you put everything, all single pesticides together, from chemistry or food toxicology standpoint, the evidence shows that it's safe. But what happens after that for our gut microbiome, we don't know.
And combining with our air fresheners and cleaners and all, so I'll stop now.
At the same time, you get like the part that it was just kind of like related, but it was just too much to cover, was there's a problem with migration of packaging materials to the food. Because like packages are multi-layer, like polyethylene is just one of layers, polypropylene. So what happens when it contacts with a low pH over time, like it migrates. So those are like other things that we see, like microplastics kind of thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Gail.
So if there's somebody else who wants to ask the question, I'm sorry, I tend to always have a lot.
No.
But it was such an interesting presentation, and my head is still spinning trying to understand it all. So one of the questions I have from one of your very first slides is, in the United States, we are using or eating this much organic food, but we're only producing this much. So where does it all come from? Because if it comes from other countries and it has to be brought here, by the time you get it in your organic food store on the shelf, it might not be as fresh as maybe some food that is not organic but that was produced next door in the other store. And then isn't that fresh food?
So generally speaking, the problem is just the lifestyle. So ideally, it's like, if I could, personally, I would have my backyard farming, like getting my food from my backyard. So because the taste is different, the experience is different. You enjoy it. It's just part of the body and soul enrichment. But with the lifestyle, it's impossible. So again, the packaging, the temperatures, transportation temperatures, methodology, they have been designed in a way that over time you have minimum loss in ingredients, but definitely the enjoyment, the overall experience is different. It's just like getting a fresh bread out of the oven versus getting frozen bread and toasted. So it's a different experience. Definitely you're losing some aromatic compounds, but those aromatic compounds that are responsible for those enjoyments may not be significant in case of health. It's just a spiritual aspect of that. That's the lifestyle. Yeah, we need to rely on industrial production of food. That's how it works.
How do you combat the huge subset of misinformation about pesticides? Because I try to be more conscious of certain things, and I follow people versus dietitians or nutritionists, but for every one video that I see that they produce or post on social media, I see 20 or 30 from other fitness influencers or faux scientists or people who have a Dr. Google degree kind of thing. Everyone has an opinion, everyone has something to say, but the people who study it seem to be drowned out by this large crowd. So how do you combat this wave of misinformation that people are getting?
Yeah, the way that I found that might help is just going to the governing body of that knowledge. For example, Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They publish some evidence-based information, or just Institute of Food Technologies for Food Science Procedure, or American Chemistry Society of Chemistry, if I'm not wrong. So for anything that is related to that, and also yes, there's some politics involved for FDA, USDA, EPA. We know that, but currently, those websites, even though some of them have been eliminated for the past 2 years or so, they still contain some a good amount of evidence-based information. So I would say relying on the source rather than people perception, because I was just for this one, I was just looking at a way that to explain this, I needed to spend hours and hours to make it in a way that kind of understandable. So yeah, it's kind of going through experts and sources. Yeah, was it? Yes, question.
In the pesticide use, you had a chart there by crop, right? And it seemed that wheat was rather low comparatively, right? Because a lot of wheat gets made in the U.S., but it's way below potatoes, and I understand, corn is the biggest crop, but is there a reason why wheat takes a lot less pesticide?
In case of why, I definitely need to go back and see what are the list of pests and diseases that you can find in wheat, agricultural science aspect of that, compared to corn, plus so I think that's the type of the practice that they use. So I don't have a direct answer to that. So I don't know it, but my assumption is that we are looking at like different groups of pests and herbs and like practice in wheat compared to the other. So this is how I can.
I'm just wondering, it's something that
Yeah.
the susceptibilities, right?
Yeah.
Potatoes are
Mhm.
much smaller crop in mass produced than wheat, but they're used a whole lot more. Right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the type of pest that they're, and
Maybe a type of pest and like, yeah, that's why I can't like, or just the type of the practice that they have in agriculture.
We're after 1 o'clock, so we probably ought to
Okay.
finish up for today. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure.